Okay. Hello and welcome back to the Players Lounge with myself, Paul Neal, and Jeff Hendrick. And today we have our very, very first guest, a familiar face to many Irish fans, John Egan. John, welcome to the show.
Thanks a million, lads. How are you keeping?
All good. You're looking great, John.
You too, Jeff. Well, you haven't aged a day.
Not Paul, no.
Yeah, Paul, you're looking well too, bud.
Thanks. I got a bit of work done, so you can say I'm aging kind of a bit now myself. So
Yeah, all right,
it
man.
is it is what it is. Yeah, I suppose. Well, I suppose used to are very very close mates. You've agreed to do this. So yeah, we're gonna I suppose bring it back to maybe some of your early days, and Jeff and John, maybe you can reminisce on kind of your early encounters of each other.
Do you remember the first time, John? Or
The first memory I have of Jeff, I think I might have told you this before, but we played St. Kevin's with my local club, Greenwood, in the National Cup. I think it was under 13s. And I was actually playing centre mid at the time, up against Jeff, and they had players like Owen Waring and Robbie Brady. They basically 10 of their players were playing for the Irish team, really. So they came down to Cork, and my
environment?
hostile environment, yeah, Coffee's feeling Toker. But you were captain. I think you were captain, weren't you?
Think so, yeah.
And after like 5 minutes, they were giving us the runaround anyway. Like we couldn't get near them, to be fair. We had a goal kick and we were all getting up the pitch. And I remember standing next to Jeff and he just shouted out basically, "These are bollocks." And then I looked at him and I thought, yeah, you're right. And they went on to beat us 4-0. But yeah, that was my first encounter with Jeff, trying to get the ball off him in the middle of the park. I don't even know if you remember that, yeah?
Jesus. No, I don't think I would have said a word like that back then, if I'm being honest. But no, we were probably we were a good side, and I think we had many trips over the years down to different places down the country, and we were probably short of ourselves. We weren't too bothered where we had to go, so it didn't surprise me if I did say something like that. But
Yeah, I don't think
I,
you said something along the lines of "these are done" or something. It was funny though, because I remember thinking like it's going to be a long day at the office here.
yeah, yeah, good days for us.
Yeah.
But no, probably I'm trying to think of my first memory was the sort of Ireland trials when we'd all go. Where was it, at AUL or something like that? And there'd be probably 100 kids, and you'd just be put into random teams, and you'd know a few of the lads from your league or whatever. But then we got into the setup, and you'd see John, and there was another centre back, Anto, would come up, and they were just always quite small for me size, for my age as well compared to the lads. So uh, it was hard to tell the two lads apart until we got to know them, and Anto had a tattoo on his back, so you were able to tell the difference then. But now over the years, then me and John got. I think we played every age group all the way up, and it was great just getting to know him, as each year went by, just meeting up and getting closer. And yeah, now we're just good friends, I suppose. But story, I suppose I've got one story of John where was it the 17s or 19s Euros we're in?
19s.
The 19s, yeah. And you were captain, weren't you?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and to be fair, we had a good run at it.
Yeah, good
And
crack.
just Yeah, just for me, like John was, he was probably that leader where you'd probably admit yourself you don't shout loads or anything, but you just. I think I've mentioned it before how sound you are around the place, and I think I touched on it when we were talking about you being back in the Ireland setup and all, and like it will have a big effect because you talk to everyone, you get to know people, and you're just that, like, your character is such a nice person and down to earth. And but John, he played us an inspirational, was it Al Pacino speech. And to be fair, it's hard to put this across, but when you're in like a tournament style, you've been with that group, you've gone through the hard stages of qualifying, and then you're in a foreign country, and you're just in a hotel, whether you're training or getting ready for the games, but you're just around each other so much. And uh, played that speech, got all the lads in the room together, and trying to G us up for the game. But you could see he gave a speech himself, John did, and just you could see the emotion in him, and it touched us all. We were like, I was nearly crying. I was just trying to be hard and not let a tear out. But no, it was like you build that bond and sort of brotherhood up together. So that was one of the things that sort of stood out for me growing up, is John doing that at that age. Like, I don't think I would have rounded the lads up and got them in a room and played that speech and then made a speech myself. But it just shows like he was a leader from a young age.
Yeah, and to add to that, John.
Yeah, no, yeah, I remember it well. That group was special, and like, even Jeff talking about that story reminds me of that whole group and the qualify. We had 2 qualifying stages to get through to even get to the European finals. And I think that could have been before. He was either before a game against Italy, or else it was before a game at the finals against Romania, I think, where we needed a result to get out of the group.
I think it was the Romania one, yeah.
But we had a lot of special memories with that group, and looking back now, I suppose that would have been about 2011. I say, so what's that? 15 years ago, and it still feels like yesterday when Jeff is talking about it there. When you're playing for Ireland at any age, it's huge, and the run we went on with that team, we all forged a real close bond together at that time. And we eventually made the semi-finals of the Euros, to get to the last 4 in the Euros. I'm not sure if Ireland have done it since, but for us at the time it was huge. Like, it was like the biggest thing I'd ever done in my career, and a lot of lads had ever done in their career who weren't playing first team football yet at the time. But we had fantastic players as well, and Jeff, like, I know he's humble enough, but he was our main player. He was our best player. I remember we played the qualifying games out, and I think we were out in Poland to get to the Euros, and you scored the winner against Poland, didn't you? Was it the winner?
Yeah,
First game
header,
against
believe
Poland.
it or not, yeah.
You scored the winner, yeah. And then the next game we drew, I think, with Ukraine 0-0, and then we had to beat Italy in the last game to qualify. And Italy, obviously, were heavily favourites. A lot of good
players from what I remember, didn't they?
Had some really good players. Yeah, I think like El Sharawi was playing, maybe Immobile, maybe a few of them. But I think Jeff was probably the one we all kind of looked up to. He was making the breakthrough at Derby. He was, the centre midfield player. He was really experienced for his age as a player, kind of mature on the pitch. And he really kind of inspired the group himself with his quality. And I don't want to be forgetting anyone's names and stuff, but the talent and the mentality we had in that squad, that's something that even though we didn't win a trophy at the end of it, it is something that I look back on still to this day. I'll search the games or photos from that time and that team, and yeah, it's it's something that means a lot to me.
Yeah, but I kind of look. I think Matt Doherty was in that team as well, wasn't he?
Yeah, Matt Doherty. With Aaron McCary in goal, Derek Williams, myself, Anthony O'Connor, Joe Shaughnessy, Jeff, John Soul, Samir Carruthers.
40 was there now.
Yeah, 40, Sean Murray, Conor Murphy. I think Jason Knight's brother, Kevin Knight, he was there.
Yeah.
Pipo Lopez was actually in the squad.
I roomed with him. with him one of the trips. Yeah.
I'm sorry if I'm forgetting anyone now, but there was that many players there.
Sounds like it, yeah.
We were missing out on Robbie and Big Duffy as well, weren't we?
Robbie and Duff, it kind of jumped up to the 21s, I think, by that stage. But yeah, geez, we had a fantastic squad, and a lot of the lads had really good, careers after it as well. So, we had a really talented squad, and we were probably a bit unfortunate in the semi-finals. We had a couple of suspensions. But yeah, great memories. And I suppose that's kind of that would have been the highlight of my underage Irish career anyway, for sure.
Yeah, well, I actually look at like even just the World Cup in the summer just gone, and I find that like a lot of them tournaments, more so probably now, there's more ways to watch them than probably back then when in 2011. But like even that one there, like I think you look at a lot of that squad, I think they'll go on to be future internationals. There was a game like that a few years back. I think it was 2018 or 17, and Martin O'Neill was at the game, and it was Troy Parrott and Adam Ida, Jason Knight, Jason Malumbi. A lot of them were playing in the game against Holland. They lost on penalties. The keeper got sent off, and Martin, he was obviously the Ireland manager at the time. And happened to be at the tournament, but he was fighting with the referee over the call to send the keeper
I
off. And
think I half remember that. Yeah.
it was a quarter final or something like that, and he sent off the keeper Jimmy Corcoran, I think his name is, and he sent him off for encroaching on his line. He gave him a second yellow and sent him off in the shootout. Like, it was ridiculous.
Yeah.
But yeah, they ended up losing. But Troy was, who I'm sure we'll talk about later on, but even back then, himself, Adam Ida and all, they had a really good core group. So when you're speaking about that, it just kind of reminded me of that, you know.
It's nice to see a core group like that, because sort of there probably hasn't been a core group like that since our age till the ones you've named now, where there was probably a bit of a gap. Not many broke through in between that age. Maybe off the top of my
Josh
head,
Cullen, I
probably,
think.
yeah, Josh Cullen, Callum O'Dowd, maybe Alan Brown, but like there wasn't like a group of 5 or 6, I suppose, where like you even listen to the names John said, we're in the same age group, like me, John, Duffy, Derek Williams, Robbie. Do you know what I mean? Like when you have that group and you've probably built that bond up over so many years, and then to be, to say in the national team, it's really good. And I suppose I've never even thought of it that way, where you look at the lads you've just named, they've all sort of had that in their younger age, and it's something special they'll all have together now, I suppose, as well.
And they all kind of connected through with the 21s and stuff, and worked their way up with Queeveen and all of them. But I suppose, John, just on you, obviously, we spoke last time in COVID, in terms of the last time I remember having you on a podcast with us, and kind of up to that point, you kind of told us where your career was. Sheffield United were going quite well at the time. What are your kind of memories from, I suppose, that season when you were in the Premier League with Sheffield United? Obviously COVID and everything else was a bit of a nuisance, but in terms of Sheffield United and that kind of Irish core between yourself and the Stevens, Didsey, it seemed like a lot of Irish fans would have been watching you guys and cheering you on, because obviously more Irish in the Premier League, and you were just a really good side to watch. And I thought you well, people might have thought you kind of overperformed or punched above your weight, but I thought you were more than justified in any of the games that I watched.
Yeah, we had a fantastic time. We got promoted, and we kind of had a way of playing at the time which was unusual, with the overlapping centre backs and creating overloads out wide, and really kind of came up to the Premier League with no fear. The manager instilled that into us at the time, and we had really good players who were, really good ages, signed good players to add to that. And we took the league by storm, really, for a promoted side. We didn't spend, the millions teams are spending now to have to survive. We went up, and we kept playing the way we played in the championship the year before, and I think we caught a lot of teams off guard. And then once you get momentum in football, it's a powerful thing. And we had Bramall Lane rocking every home game and every away game. Then because we've just come up, the opposition fans probably expect to be winning at half time, and if it's not going their way, the fans were getting on top of them, and we kind of played on that a bit too. And we found ourselves fighting for Europe in our first year up in the Premier League, which was huge. Obviously COVID hit, probably at a tough time for us, to be honest, because we were going so well. But we came back after that, and we managed to finish ninth, I think, top half, which was brilliant. And as you said, the Irish players involved, myself, Didsey, and Cal Robbo. We had a good Irish core there as well, which helped the national team too. So it was good to share the memories, with the whole squad, really. And it's a time in my life that I look back really fondly on, because we were competing, with some of the best teams in the world, and we had a really good team ourselves. So yeah, it was a brilliant time to be at Sheffield United.
You scored some nice goals as well. Remember that volley inside the box? I just always remember your celebration with the arms out running off.
Yeah,
I think I know who that was against.
that was against Jeff's old boys and my old boys, the Clarets.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that was a great feeling to get my first goal in the Premier League. yeah, dream come true, really. At the time, I suppose the way I kind of got to the Premier League wasn't straightforward. So to finally get there and being a really good side, winning games, Jeff will tell you, the Premier League's great if you're getting results and winning games, but I've been on the other side of it too, where we found it hard to get results, and it's not the most enjoyable. But yeah, to be in it that year, going out every game with a good chance of winning was brilliant.
Jeff, I think you wanted to ask John about kind of promotions and stuff like that. So if you want to,
Yeah, yeah, it was probably, for me, looking at that Sheffield team, obviously I saw you when, well, I saw them from League One up to the Championship, and then how dominant they were in the Championship to then come up to the Premier League. Um, like John said there, with a lot of the same players who I think I talked about it already, where it's like build that bond, but then to get into the Premier League and just play the way they were, and he was dead right. They blew teams away. Like, no, I don't think many teams know how to deal with them in that first year. Like he was saying, the overlapping centre backs, and they were just like red arrows. And then I remember I played against them, and honestly, it was like sometimes it happens in football where you just look at a team and think they've got extra men on the pitch here, surely. Like, there was no space for anyone. But for me, I'd bring it back a little bit, because it's hard for a footballer to finish his career and say they've won things. It's quite rare. Like, it doesn't happen. And for you to win promotion, the feeling, like, I've had setbacks in playoffs and all, and you never forget them. But I could just like to have that feeling, and like you said, with such a good group of players, and you're all at a good age and fighting to get into the Premier League, where you all wanted to test yourself. Like, how was that? Like, how do you explain that to someone? The way they say bottle it up, but how do you explain that?
Yeah, like it's impossible to explain really the feeling. It's a long season, the championship, 46 games, Saturday, Tuesdays, a lot of the time. So you don't really have time to process it all. You're just trying to get results every week, and you're never looking. You don't go out the first 2-3 weeks of the season and look at the league table. You know what I mean? But the last 7 or 8 weeks, at the time, it was us and Leeds basically going for second. Norwich were top, kind of by a distance. They were, cruising, and people say, oh, don't worry about other results and all that, but you can't help. But if you win a game, you can't help but check how the other team get on. So we were neck and neck right up until about a week or two left in the season, and I think it flipped over Easter weekend. I think they were 3 points ahead of us going into Easter weekend. We won on the Friday, they lost, and then we won on the Monday and they lost again. And then I think there was only 2 games left after that, and we knew we just had to win one, which the first one was against Ipswich, and we did that. And that feeling after that game was incredible. To be fair, all of our team, all of our squad, had, I don't think, had any Premier League experience really. So everybody was working so hard to try and get into the Premier League, and to do it with that group of players, yeah, it was incredible. And all season, you look back on the whole season, kind of when the season's over, you look back on games and chat about games and stuff. But when you know that if you win this game, you're in the Premier League, it feels like the biggest game in the world. So yeah, we handled it really well, the pressure, and we enjoyed it well after as well. But yeah, it was an incredible feeling to do it with such a good group.
I suppose it was good for you as well. You talk about momentum, that you had to go probably down to the wire. Do you know what I mean? And then it came to the summer, and it was just like you just didn't have that stopgap where you look at teams, and I'm not trying to compare it, but you look at maybe like Liverpool last year, who won it so early, and then they foot off the gas, and now have struggled this year. But like, you just had to keep rolling and going and going and going, and then you just picked up where you left off pretty much the next year, and just were flying. So,
Definitely, yeah. I think that played a huge part in the following season too, because you come back to pre-season, all of a sudden the Premier League balls are out, and you have to step it up again, and there's new signings coming in the door. We're signing players basically in every position for competition. So everybody's on their toes. Everybody has to earn their place again. And to be fair to the manager, he knew the lads were doing well. He believed in all the lads who had done so well in the previous year, and gave everyone a chance to stake their claim. And I think what helped us in that first season when we went up was we had a really settled side. Everybody up their game a level. We had a way of playing. We were all on the same page. You know what it's like when you're in a well drilled outfit, well coached team. You've played with these players a lot. You know exactly what you're going to do when you're on the pitch together. And we managed to keep a settled side for the whole season, which really helped us. And we added competition for places, and you know I think we improved. We played against better teams than we played against in the past, and learning from playing against them teams kind of improved us as well. So yeah, I think the momentum was definitely there from the season before.
Can I just ask you, John, on you mentioned obviously not a lot of players when you were in the promotion run hadn't played Premier League. What was the kind of feeling within the group going up to play Premier League, and kind of when was it you realised, oh, you know, this is the elite level sort of thing?
I think the feeling before the first game of the season against Bournemouth, everybody, just one. There was no real fear factor. Everybody just wanted to get stuck into it, and I think that kind of came from the manager and the staff. Kind of nothing to lose, nothing to fear mentality. You have to earn your right to get there. We earned our right to get there, so we had to just attack the season. I remember a couple of games. Remember we played Chelsea once at Stamford Bridge earlier on in that season. I think it was a few games in, and we were 2-0 down at half time. And we kind of went there probably the first time that season. We kind of went somewhere and were a bit tentative. And I remember the manager saying at half time, this isn't us. Like, just go out there and just like forget about who you're playing. Just go out there and play like I know you can play. And take the handbrake off. We managed to go out and get a 2-2 draw, which kind of flipped our mentality going to the bigger teams in the Premier League and playing against the bigger teams, because naturally when you go to a place like that, it's going to be tough. You're going to have to defend well, but I suppose going 2-0 down and having that talk at half time and then managing to get a result, that gave us even more belief to attack the rest of the season.
Well, just bring it back to international for a second now. During that kind of period in Sheffield United, you got the nickname Champions League Egan, through Stephen Kenny, I think. Obviously that was a bit of a running joke at the time. But he did come out and say it, and you became a regular in the Irish team kind of from about that COVID period. I know you'd been in squads with Mick McCarthy and stuff like that, but probably didn't get your chance, I suppose, until Stephen Kenny really came in, I felt. And then you just became a regular from that point. What was it like getting into the squad on a more regular basis? And then obviously, I think like you kind of mentioned the players that you played with earlier in our chat already, but like this, yourself and probably Matt Doherty were kind of one or two players who probably got caps very late on and probably should have had a lot more caps before then. I think a lot of people would say that about you, but maybe you're kind of looking at the position. Centre half, we've always been blessed with really good centre backs, thankfully. Maybe not thankfully for you though.
Yeah, no, playing for Ireland was always, the biggest dream. That's why you moved to England. You want to play at the highest level you can to try and get in the Ireland squad. Growing up, we all support football teams, but Ireland was the number one team, and that was always my dream to play with Ireland. Seeing the likes of Jeff and Robbie break in so early, was brilliant for fellas like me. Because gave me inspiration to follow on in their footsteps and try and get into the squads with them. So yeah, I just had to keep my head down at club level. Try to do as well as I can, manage to get into the squad and try stay in the squad. I had to bide my time because the players, were playing really well ahead of me in the position. And as soon as I was able to get my chance, I had to take it. And I just gave it everything to try and make every squad I could and try play as many games as I could. And yeah, I suppose every day, every time you get the call up to Ireland, it's unbelievable. And wearing the green jersey is the pinnacle.
Yeah, Jeff, I suppose having John back in the squad with you, that must have been great for you. Obviously, you have Robbie Brady, you have Shane Duffy as well. So you have that core group, but then moving on around that period, like having John in around the place. And I know from speaking to other players that you're quite different, obviously, what you would be on camera, say, or whatever behind the scenes. Like a lot of people speak very highly of you and of your character. Say you're one of the kind of funny lads and stuff like that. I know Jack Burns said it and stuff like that. So that kind of have John in and around there. What was that like for you, Jeff? With your big smile on your face?
No, it was good. Obviously, like I touched on that earlier, like getting to know John through the years, and we stayed in touch no matter what team we were at, and you'd meet up through the age groups coming up. But then to see him, like he said earlier, it probably wasn't a straightforward route to the Premier League. He had to go and take a step back to go maybe two forward a little bit. And for me, then it was great to have the likes of John and a few others come in who I suppose are so comfortable around. And it's a weird thing, and John will be able to agree with it. Like you could be away from the Ireland setup for months, but then the minute you meet up, it's like you're just back on track to the way it was a few months before, and you're just laughing and joking. And it's a different type of environment. Like at club level, you sort of go in and you're obviously having breakfast, or you're training and having a bit of a laugh. But in international setup, like you're on top of each other for a week to 10 days. So there's no running or hiding from me. You're having coffees every day with each other, and you're just catching up. And like John said earlier, you do reminisce on certain times, or like our funny parts. And I suppose like when you know each other so well, like it's easy to wind each other up, or just have a bit of crack and make each other laugh. And you'd always find it, certain players in certain rooms, whether they're watching the sports, or just having a bit of fun. And having such a familiar face like that is, I think it's really settling. And I suppose for the likes of John, who probably came in a little bit after, to maybe have a few of us who he knew so well, like to settle in. Like I think for me, I didn't know too many players when I first got into the squad, so it was a little bit more daunting, I suppose, for me. But yeah, having the likes of John and all come in was good fun.
No, yeah, 100%. Like when I first came in, it was good that Jeff and Robbie to latch on to straight away. Obviously knew McLean from my time at Sunderland as well, and Myler, who was very good to me at Sunderland as well. I was close to Myler too, so. And I kind of knew, the likes of John O'Shea and the lads who were at Sunderland as well. But for me to have kind of grown up in the underage teams with Jeff and Robbie, it was brilliant for me to go in and get straight to it, and learn from the boys what to do around the camp and stuff. But yeah, it was brilliant.
You scored some big goals for it. Obviously, you remember that goal against Portugal. Obviously another goal. I think the last time I was in a room with you was the Scotland game, and you scored in the Scotland game, but it was the press conference before that, match day -1. I think that was the last time we were in a room together. But you'd scored then, and you became, as I said, during that period, a regular player, a captain in that time as well. But if you were to kind of look at that period, what would be your favorite moments? And I know we didn't win a whole pile of games, but we had some good moments, and you were involved with quite a few of them.
Yeah, obviously scoring a goal for Ireland is unbelievable and a great feeling. But I think that Portugal game where I scored is very bittersweet, because it's a game I think you look back on and still think we could have at least got a draw, if not won it, which would have made the goal a lot better, and I'd probably feel a lot better about it. But no, listen, like we had some fantastic results at the same time. I know we didn't have loads of wins in that, but I remember we went away to Azerbaijan and beat them, 3-0, I think it was. Luxembourg, we had a good result away there, 3-0. We had I think we drew with Portugal 0-0 at home, where we're pushing on to get the win. And I think, that around that time, it felt like we were in a lot of games. We lost a lot of tight games, which was probably, you know, flip of a coin, and we didn't quite get the results that I felt we kind of deserved in some of them games. We lost a lot of tight games, and that probably came back to bite us in the qualifying part of it. But yeah, we had an experienced squad. I think the kind of the dynamic of the squad had changed with a lot of young players coming in as well at the same time, and the older lads were kind of all of a sudden really experienced players. And it was probably a bit of a transitional period, but I think we had some really good coaching. I think we had some good game plans. We played well in a lot of games, and didn't quite get the results. And obviously it's a results business, but still I look back on a lot of them games with fondness. And I remember, my first squad was probably 2017, I think. And that's like all of a sudden it's 9 years later, and it goes really fast. So the main thing is every camp and every game is to try and grasp it and try and make the most of every camp, because and every game, because it goes really fast.
Yeah, I suppose if you're looking at it, you probably before the last window you got called up, and the squad you probably were in. I think you might have been 18 months beforehand, but you probably felt like an experienced player at that point. But then when we fast forwarded to a few months back, you're even more experienced yourself. Probably and Seamus are the two most experienced in the squad at that point. But it's just mad when you think about that, because of the, I suppose, the influx of youth that kind of happened during that Stephen Kenny period, where he was bringing a lot of players up from the 21s. But Jeff, on based what on John has said there, is there anything you wanted to add to that? Like, did you feel like that in a lot of games? Because I actually did feel like we were in a lot of games when we if we didn't score the first goal, then it kind of went against us. And maybe if we had got the first goal in some of those games, we could have got the wins in those tight games, as he says.
Yeah, even hearing John talk about it, and you do think back, and some games we lost to, like, you know a screamer. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Mm.
I mean, yeah.
most times that the player's not even hitting the target, let alone going in. But and then it does make you think. Like, I think we all enjoyed having Mick there, and we had a hard group, and we started getting results. But it makes you think, like, there were certain games where we came, and we scored late goals under Mick, and it gave us that chance to qualify. But I think, like John said, we were in games, and you're thinking, if we had the crowd in, you got to remember we didn't have the crowd, and we'd a different sort of squad. And if we had the crowd behind us in certain games, would that have urged us, and then would it have gone the other way, and we picked up a win or a draw or something like that? So, hindsight's a good thing. We'll never know, I suppose. But I do agree. We were in a good few games that didn't go our way, and just makes me think, like, if we had maybe the crowd there, and because I think throughout my whole career, the crowd have been massive for us. So it was just a shame, especially with the young lads coming into the setup, to not have that maybe for the first couple of years. And then I think, like everyone would sort of say, if you're not getting the results, of course, I suppose the energy towards the squad, the manager, whoever it is going to change, and they're going to want something different, and that's inevitably what happened. But I just think things could have been different, I suppose, if we had packed stadiums, and a real fortress at home, I suppose.
Yeah, but just taking it to obviously a few months back, John, and you came back into the squad. How did that come about? Obviously, you're playing football, and we know like how good you are, and I believe you should be in the squad upcoming as well. But when you think back to like yourself and Seamus coming into that squad, in that Portugal window away from home, and I think it was Armenia at home as well to finish that window before the Portugal and Hungary window. But kind of yourself getting back into the Irish setup That must have been a great feeling for you as well, considering the injury, and we'll talk about that injury in a few minutes. But just to get yourself back into the Irish squad must have been massive for you.
My last game for Ireland before that camp would have been the Holland game in 2023, just before I did my Achilles. So, you go from kind of playing every week for club and country to being sidelined for 8, 9 months. And then I moved to Burnley and wasn't getting game time. So then, I had a decision to make, to get my career back on track. And, I moved to Hull on deadline day. With the sole focus of getting back to playing regular football. I managed to do that, get my form going again and, get back on the pitch. And, you know, that ultimately led to me getting called back into the squad for, such an important window, and to get back in the squad was kind of, it was huge for me to get back into the Ireland squad. And, it was huge for me to kind of get that recognition because, I've been out of it for close to 2 years through injury and, not playing games. So yeah, I always have believed in myself. I always will believe in myself. And, I just, I wanted to go in there and try help the group in any way I could. If I wasn't going to be playing, then I wanted to help the lads that were playing. And if I was playing, then I want to go out there and give my all. So the two windows, the first window we obviously lost to Portugal late on, but I thought it was a very strong performance. Beat Armenia 1-0, which gave us a big chance. And everybody knows what happened at home to Portugal and away to Hungary, which was a special week. So to be back involved for those two camps was fantastic for me. And it was brilliant for the team to get the results, and brilliant for the country really to get the results to give us a real chance now and keep us in the hunt.
Yeah, can I just ask you, because obviously you came on late in the Portugal game and we had played so well, defended so well in that game, and then to concede so late. So like, did the manager do anything specifically psychologically to the squad or anything like that? Because obviously we know how the rest of the games played out so well, but to go from such a low there to such a high, how did he manage to pick the squad back up, probably coming out from the Portugal game? Because we were so close to getting that point that we were thinking at the time, if we didn't get some sort of result there, we were potentially out,
Games come thick and fast. We had Armenia straight away after that game. So, it was on to the Armenia game to try and get the win we needed there to, keep us in the race. And, we managed to beat Armenia at home, which set us up for the following camp. And, I think the message from the manager and the staff was, belief. You have to believe. If you don't believe, then there's no point. So, everybody came back to the next camp full of belief. Maybe not many people outside the camp probably had belief that, we could beat Portugal and Hungary, but, I can rest assured belief was definitely in the camp. And, I think the lads showed tremendous character, tremendous ability and tremendous belief to get two results that we needed to get to finish in a playoff place.
Jeff, did you want to ask John about any of that, or any of that, even that Hungary Portugal window, the feeling, or even just from the lads that you would have played with as well, the Troy Parrots and all of these youngsters who probably have just seen narrow defeats, have always kind of been on the wrong side of defeats and stuff like that, to finally get these two huge wins.
Yeah, it was massive, and I get what John was saying there. Probably with the game coming so fast, it does help. And sometimes I know we didn't win away, but just with how well the lads done and the performance they put out there and frustrated Portugal, I think they would have just took belief off that, knowing they were probably seconds away. If you go back a few years before, like the game John scored in, I think because we ran them so close, it gave us the belief when we played them at home and other games we played in that group. So that can happen. And yeah, like I've touched on it many a times, and I know John probably has as well. But just for the way they turned it around in that November camp, and done something like he said a lot of people didn't expect was just amazing. For me, just sort of touching on, I know you said it when you have belief in yourself, and I know that knowing you so well and all, but was there any part of you where you're thinking, time's running out for me to get back in the squad, or were you just like, no, just keep ticking away, keep playing games, and it will happen, or was that little doubt there?
I wouldn't say so. No, I'm not the type to kind of look too far ahead. To be honest with you, um, I knew what I had to do to try and put myself back in the frame. I had to play football games and I had to play well. And if I was, called upon, I'd 100% be ready to go. And that's what I did. And you know, I, I don't really look too far ahead and wonder, I'm going to do this in case this happens, or I hope this happens. I just, I turn up training every day, try play well, try get in my club team, try do well on a match day, and then everything else kind of is a byproduct of that. I've a lot of belief in myself as a player to to keep improving. I'm 33 now, but I feel like because I hadn't played for 18 months or so, I kind of I still feel like
You're well rested.
I feel like I'm well rested. Yeah, exactly that. Getting back from not playing for that long, you're just bursting to go, and you just want to cherish every training session, every game, and I think as you get older, you kind of look after your body probably a lot better than you do when you're 23. To be honest, you know more about what way your body reacts to certain trainings and certain games, and your nutrition. I have two kids as well, so they keep me busy and keep me mobile after training every day.
Don't forget the dog as well, John.
And the dog needs walking too. Yeah, so yeah. Listen, I'm not one to really doubt things. I believe that what's for you won't pass you. My mother keeps saying so. Just try and crack on, try do as well as I can, and try to. Obviously the Ireland squad was a massive goal of mine to get back in. And I suppose during the dark days of rehab mornings where you're kind of going through the motions, that was always in the back of my head. You're doing all this for a reason. You're chasing this feeling again, and you're chasing that green jersey again, and that's kind of what made push me through. All the barriers I faced in my career.
And just with the manager, how did he go about calling you back into the squad? And what's he like in and around the place for the players and stuff like that? Because he seems to be quite a very popular character.
Yeah, really good. The manager and staff. I know John O'Shea. I was at Sunderland with John O'Shea as a player, and then he was obviously our coach with Ireland as well. And Paddy McCarthy as well. It was my first time being in a camp with Paddy McCarthy. So yeah, the manager John and Paddy were brilliant, and they set us up really well for the games. And as Jeff said, when all the lads meet up, all the Irish lads, there's great camaraderie there. We're all proud Irishmen. We're all proud to wear the jersey, and everybody gives 100% every day in training and in the games, and you know what you're going to get. You're going to get good, honest, hard-working players who are going to give their all for the jersey. I think, and everybody just fed off that.
Yeah, I mean, because I think I don't take this the wrong way, but I think maybe a lot of players or a lot of fans maybe would have forgotten about you. I actually sent you a message about, I'd say, 3 to 4 weeks before that, just saying miss you. Because you'd been playing well and all, and I had a feeling that you just may get into the squad. I don't know if you remember that, but you might.
I probably do. Yeah, I do. Yeah.
Yeah, but and then it was just funny to see obviously get back into the squad, and then obviously Seamus was back in there as well. I think a lot of people credited you. I think Nathan Collins actually name checked yourself and Seamus as kind of the two that really helped that group. And obviously we saw the scenes afterwards, which I think, I know some people might say it was over the top celebrating or whatever, but I think that was just huge psychologically for that squad to get those two results in the week, and just you seen how much it meant to the nation to see the football team doing well, getting results and stuff like that. That must have just been amazing in that moment to be experiencing that.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. I mean, when Troy scored the winner out in Hungary, you know, I don't know if I've had a feeling like that. To be honest, it was, it was like something out of a movie. But you felt it was coming, even when we were 2-1 down. I was obviously on the bench with a few of the lads, and we just felt like we're going to win this game. Like we just had a feeling it was coming. And to actually do it and win the game was huge. And I think the biggest thing really is what it does for the country and for the nation and for the fans. Young kids growing up, they want to see Ireland doing well. I remember watching Irish teams when I was growing up, seeing big goals, and these are moments that inspire the next generation of young players and young kids. And I think that's probably the most important thing, is to inspire your country, and to have a feel good factor around the football team is what everybody wants in Ireland. And I think them two results definitely did that. Everybody's back buzzing, and everybody's really looking forward to marching out to the next game. And as a country, we pride ourselves on trying to be the best we can, and trying to upset the odds a lot of times. And I think going into Portugal at home and Hungary away, getting 6 points from those two games can only give you more belief. And um, the country feeds off the belief, the players, and everybody has to feed off that belief. And I think the biggest feeling was probably pride from everyone.
Yeah, well, like Jeff, you've been actually involved in a couple of big goals. We probably don't get enough credit for it, but obviously the one against Wales that you set for James McLean, and even the one for John O'Shea against Germany. I know it was a draw, but it was still a late goal. You've kind of experienced those kind of big moments as well. So how nice was it maybe for you? Because you've seen a lot of these players, and you've seen them suffer heartache after heartache after heartache, and they never, like, only really before that, the only kind of real big result we got was the Scotland 3-0 in the Aviva, and there's not been many like big wins other than that. So you must have been delighted kind of seeing that, and maybe knowing what that feeling of a late goal does for the country.
Like you said, some of the lads probably haven't got to feel that properly in an Irish jersey. I was lucky to be on the pitch when we've done it through the years. For me, it was like you said, to see these young lads. I think I've touched on them before. These young lads who've watched them grow through the years, and now they're like established players, men, and they're off doing their thing at whatever club they're in. But then meeting up for the national team, and like John said, trying to inspire kids. It's so good to see, and it makes me proud of them. And then, in a selfish point, it was probably the first time I've got to be a fan and witness that for a while. And it was, yeah, it was a different experience. I was a little bit speechless. I had to actually do some media work after it, which was hard, and then even asked about it, trying to put it into words was difficult, because the way it made me feel was, euphoric pretty much. It was like I said, I haven't witnessed something like that since I was probably a teenager. So it was amazing. And like I said, I've said it many times, I was proud of them, and hopefully we can have many more feelings like that. And I can hopefully be in the stadium, witnessing them live. But yeah, it was just something special, and so happy for everyone involved. But probably what John said, for the nation, I suppose. We've been part of it for so long, where fans weren't in the stadium, or having something to cheer about. I think the last camp definitely gave them something like that, and everyone's looking forward to the next one. No one wants to jinx anything, or say it, and that will be thrown back in our face a little bit. But we're all excited for it, and looking forward to it.
I think, well, the word we're saying there is don't tempt fate. But John, if Ireland do get to the World Cup, Um, just for you, if you made the squad and we get to the World Cup, just hearsay. But how, like, would that just be the absolute pinnacle to play the World Cup for Ireland?
You know me, I don't get too far ahead of myself now. You know, I'm focusing on the next day, the next game. Um, and as you said, probably don't tempt fate. You know, I just want to keep my head down, keep playing football, do as well as I can, see what happens.
Well, I think that's a good way to kind of bring us back then, because, you know, if hopefully, please God, we do get to a World Cup and you're in the squad, I think it would be an amazing achievement. And I think, Jeff, you kind of want to touch on kind of John being out for so long, and then, kind of how he's built his way back to, playing and playing every week and playing almost twice a week now, 90 minutes most of the time.
Yeah, obviously it'd be amazing, but to be out for such a time, I did. How do I put it? As in, I've been in that part of my career, I suppose, where you're out of contract, and I suppose John's half answered it earlier, where he's like he doesn't think too far ahead, and the belief. But was was there any sort of emotions while you were out of contract? Were you like, I've had moments where I was thinking, like, why haven't I got this offer, or why haven't I at this place, or whatever? Did you have it? And where I know you're always going to believe in yourself, and you want to get back there, but it's sort of it's a little bit of a helpless situation, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's a process you have to accept. You know, I had an Achilles rupture at Sheffield United. You know, and to get to the end of my contract at Sheffield United, you know, it happened a bit abruptly in the end. To be honest with you, you know, I didn't kind of find out until pretty late on that I wouldn't be staying at Sheffield United. So, you know, I had to, you know, find myself a club. And, you know, doing that on the back of an Achilles rupture, having not played a game in 7 or 8 months, you know, is a lot different to going out and finding a club after playing 40 games in a season. So there was a lot of clubs, you know, who kind of questioned the injury and, you know, didn't really, you know, fancy it because of how long I've been out for and the type of injury it was. And then I had a couple of options, probably abroad and stuff, that, you know, might have kept me out of the Irish picture if I was to go there. So, you know, my focus was to be patient, to wait. And, you know, I met Scott Parker at Burnley, had a good chat with him, went in training there for, you know, a couple of weeks. And, you know, then after a while signed a contract at Burnley. You know, and I can only speak highly of Scott Parker. You know, he's a fantastic manager, fantastic coach. And, you know, he really helped me get back on my feet. You know, I went in there, I proved my fitness, and, you know, he signed me then off the back of that. And, you know, had I not gone there, you know, I might have gone somewhere else and it might have worked out differently. But, you know, I went into a really, really good club. You know, Burnley, well, you were there for years, Jeff. But, you know, a really good club with really good people, fighting at the top of the division to get promoted to the Premier League. So it was a great test for myself. You know, I probably went in there as fifth choice at the start, having missed the bulk of pre-season and that. And then there was a couple of sales and a couple of injuries, and, you know, I managed to get myself up to kind of next man in, really. CJ Egan, Riley, and Max Esteve were playing so well. You know, I think they only conceded I think they probably had close to 30 clean sheets that year. So it was quite hard to get into the team. You know, when there was a couple of knocks, I managed to get into the team. And then, you know, I was in no rush to leave, to be honest with you. At the time, I was really enjoying it, even though I wasn't playing. You know, I was waiting for my chance, and, you know, I was playing the odd game. Hull, Jared Dublin, who's the director of football at Hull, came in for me in January, who I knew from my time at Sheffield United. And, you know, I had a decision to make. Do I stay at Burnley, or do I go to Hull? And Hull were in a big relegation battle at the time. So, you know, a lot of people were probably advising me to stay put where I was and bide my time and wait for my chance. But I think since I've been young, you know, I've always wanted to play games. And I felt like at that time I had a better chance, of getting more game time with Hull. So, I made the move, and at the start it was, it didn't kind of go to plan because, I was in and out of the team, and probably the last 5 6 games managed to get into the team, and we stayed up on the last day, and Burnley obviously got promoted, so it was it was contrasting going from a dressing room, full of confidence to come into a dressing room which is full of quality, but because of the run Hull were on at the time, the lads were low in confidence. So it was like it was 2 seasons mixed into one. But I had full belief in the club this summer, to get things right. I wouldn't have came here otherwise. The conversations I had in January was, we're gonna do everything we can to stay up, and then kick on next year. So, I wanted to make the move. They signed some good players in January, and then in the summer we signed a lot of good players too. So, yeah, I managed to play a lot of games so far this year, and I just want to keep going really.
Couple of familiar faces for you as well. That must have been nice seeing them coming in through the door.
Yeah, brilliant. Yeah, I was doing a bit of agent work on the side, trying to get McBurney and Lunny in the door.
Don't say that too loud.
No, yeah. So, yeah, I managed to get them in the door. But it was good, because the likes of them attract other players as well. And we were actually under embargo in the summer too, so we couldn't pay fees for players, which probably helped us a bit really, because we had to kind of go down the more experience route. And dip into the loan market. But we've got a really good squad here, really good group of lads, and a good manager, good staff, and we're having a decent season, but we just want to finish as strong as we can now.
I was going to say that to you. I didn't know it was an embargo or anything, but I've mentioned it a good bit since I've finished, and it's not down to me, looking to try and get back in and get a gig somewhere. But I think it has been overlooked over the last few years, that bit of experience and older heads in a dressing room. And I know you're one of them now, even though you've had your 2 years of rest. But I'm sure you sort of agree having the older calm heads helps. They're pals of yours, but that definitely helps, doesn't it?
Makes a huge difference, yeah. Even going back to when I first got in the Ireland squads, I think I was 24, and I was probably one of the youngest players. And moving to Sheffield United at 25, I was probably one of the youngest players there too. And you know, having having been at Brentford at the time, which was, the age range was probably more 20 to 25, going to Sheffield United, which was probably 25 to 35. Um, there is a difference, you get older, you've got more experience, you can guide younger players. I think the best thing to do is probably blend it, and, have experienced players and have young players, and, players in their mid 20s, because especially in the championship, there's so many games, teams are on autopilot, and I think it's probably going a bit full circle now, where you see a lot more experienced players in the league. This year, teams have gone down the buying young and selling route, kind of more like a business model. Buy young players, improve them, sell them. But in my opinion, to get promoted out of the league, you definitely need experience.
It's a hard thing to get right in the championship by buying young and selling. I get
Yeah,
some teams in the Premier League have done it and they've got great models, but like you said, in the championship, when it's Saturday, Tuesday, Saturday, when they're coming thick and fast, it is a hard thing to do.
definitely. Yeah, and I think, the teams who want to get promoted and the teams who are up there, you look at, the likes of the teams who are all up there now, they're experienced teams. The teams are signing more experienced players now, because they probably see the value of it. It's hard for a young player to go to the championship and play 46 unbelievable games in a row. They're going to have dips in form, and I think the key is consistency. And I think experienced players probably bring a bit more consistency, and they know when to calm things down and when to liven a group up. And I think, it's definitely helped us a lot this year.
The fact that you've been out so long and then you come in and now you're obviously kind of your experience coming into that squad and that changing room, to kind of help them get out of a relegation battle. But now, your experience and kind of we've touched on your Sheffield United journey of getting promotion and stuff like that. I mean, do you think between yourself and Ollie McBurney, Lunny, all of them kind of will help you guys get as close to maybe promotion as or the playoffs as possible?
Yeah, and I think, there's a lot of players in this squad with, that type of experience. You go through the whole squad. A lot of players have played top end championship, good few promotions in there from even League One and, the championship, players playing for their countries. Kind of people probably from the outside look at Hull and probably don't actually have a look at the squad. There's a lot of good players in the squad. Who've got a lot of ability. We've had a lot of injuries as well this season, which hasn't helped. But we've navigated our way through that so far. So yeah, I think we've a really talented squad here, good mix of experience and younger players, and we just have to get results. The games are coming thick and fast now. It's the business end of the season, so it's these are the games you want to be playing, and it's a lot better to be fighting at this half of the table than the other half we were fighting at this time last year. So you just have to embrace it and give your all to try and get results.
And how's the body holding up? Because you're playing twice a week. You're playing 90 minutes. You seem like you're back to your best.
Touch wood, yeah. You need rhythm as a footballer. Jeff knows, when you're playing week in, week out, it's a lot easier to get that rhythm rather than, dipping in and out. So, yeah, the body's feeling good, I'm feeling fit. Just trying to improve and keep going.
Still
Yeah.
getting on the score sheet as well.
Yeah, against your old team Derby, yeah. That was
He
like
loves a
my
goal against your old teams.
I know.
my agreement days, yeah. Little swivel in the box. Seen Jeff do that plenty of times.
Only in training.
You scored a similar goal against Scotland as well for Ireland. Or was that one, the orange jersey?
Yeah, that was a similar one in the orange jersey as well. Yeah, yeah. Me and Jeff would have been a good centre mid partnership, I'd say.
What's been your favourite goal of your career, just out of interest?
Probably at the actual time, my first goal for Ireland, like that feeling, I kind of ran off, and my mum and my sister were actually in the crowd. They managed to sneak in somehow. They got tickets on some Portuguese website, but I was running towards Jamie McGrath, and then out of the corner of my eye, I just seen my mum jumping up and down, and then I stopped, and that feeling right there, yeah, was amazing. But yeah, it's scoring for Ireland was brilliant. Obviously, I wish it was in a result or in a win, but probably that 30 seconds after I scored that goal was amazing.
And just, do you have a favourite moment of your career so far? Obviously, you're not done, but if you were to pick one, maybe it's that goal. But do you have any other like standout moments that kind of you go and I think Jeff referenced it earlier in terms of bottling up that sort of feeling. You might be hungry in November. Like I know you didn't
Yeah,
play, but
like there is a few, like it's hard to kind of pick one, do you know what I mean? Because they all have kind of differences, you know what I mean? I think my probably the best thing for me is the people I've met through football, how close I am to Jeff now. We speak really regularly, like fellas like Chris Basham and a lot of teammates I've met throughout the years who I'm really close to. That's probably been the standout really, is the people you meet on the way. Everybody, is everybody's on kind of the same journey in football. Everybody kind of goes through the similar things, and to kind of make friends and have friends that you hope to have for life is probably the standout for me.
yeah,
It's crazy. Just I wrote a couple of words down to describe John, and I think he's explained all four words I have, where he wears his heart on his sleeve. A great friend, a family man, and a leader, and he's just slowly explained each sort of point to them throughout the podcast. So I'm glad I hit the nail on the head a little bit.
Cheers, bud.
Can I just add one that I think resilient, because
Yeah.
I think of the setbacks that John has had to endure, and I hope you don't mind me saying this, John, but obviously your father, your former teammate George Baldock, then you've had your injuries, you've had bad injuries over the years and stuff like that. I think it probably gets overlooked in terms of your resilience to bounce back, to overcome the adversity of all of those things, to be where you are now and be again back in the international fold and doing so well at Hull. So I suppose that's a credit to you. I don't know if you want to touch on that yourself, Jeff.
No, yeah, I think that's amazing, and he sort of half touched on it a little bit when he was saying about that probably he had a bit of fire in his belly, I suppose. Leaving Sheffield and having to, probably pick himself back up a little bit. And I did say my words before. You probably jotted that down 10 minutes ago, did you, Paul? But yeah, no, definitely resilience is one there, especially when you're explaining them points. And I'm happy, like I said, he's a great friend, and I'm proud that he's still putting on that green jersey. Yeah,
I think as well, and I don't know how you feel about this, but you hear a lot like people don't generally stay in touch in football. I don't like you hear a lot that it's just a job to some people and stuff like that. So in this case, it's brilliant that you are obviously so close, and that's obviously how you're obviously on this podcast now.
Yeah, we speak a lot. Myself, Jeff, and Robbie, we good crack in a few camps, but we'd say we're the class of '92, the real class of '92. But yeah, no, like Jeff is funny, like because I'd be driving from Sheffield to Hull, and if he misses a call or whatever and tries to ring me back, I'd have a text from him saying that I missed my slot. But vice versa, like we keep in contact. It's really hard to see each other. In football when you leave a club, or like, I was in a dressing room with Sheffield United for 6 years with people every day, and then you could go 2-3 years without even seeing them. It's crazy. But yeah, we do our best to keep in contact and, try and meet up. And, it's good to look back on, myself and Jeff have played together, since we were 16, which is mad, 15, 16, something like that. And Jeff, obviously moving over from Dublin, I'm moving over from Cork. It's good to share a journey with people. And kind of go through similar things, and to play in the same Irish team as Jeff. And Robbie and Duffy, and people like Myler and McLean to for me to get into the squad and play with them. It's brilliant.
I wouldn't forgive myself if I didn't ask while I had you on, but how good is Iliman and Joy?
Yeah, you're an Everton fan, aren't you? Yeah, he's really he's a top player. I was actually surprised. Like, I hope you don't mind me saying this, but I was surprised a really big club didn't take him. Like, really big club. I know he left us and went to Marseille, who are a big club, and then obviously went to Everton, who were also a really big club. But at Sheffield United, he was doing things in training that I've never seen, and now he's obviously doing it at Everton week in, week out. Yeah, in my opinion, he's he's Champions League level player. He's a top player.
Yeah, I think I actually asked you when we did our chat in COVID, kind of who was the best player you come up against. I think you said Aguero. Could be wrong. I think it was Aguero, but has that changed?
Probably Cristiano Ronaldo.
I don't think you'd played him at that point, but yeah, it would have been after that.
Yeah, obviously Cristiano Ronaldo. Like, I haven't played against Messi, but Cristiano Ronaldo or Mbappe, probably, yeah, one of them.
Pick one, John. You can't have two.
Got to be Ronaldo then, hasn't
it? Yeah.
And you had your partner in crime getting him in the chokehold in midair as well. But yeah, I suppose with Ronaldo, just on him quickly, like, we in that game, I don't think if he was on the pitch, I don't think Portugal win that game. But he's just, I don't know what it is about him, but he's like a magnet to the ball, and he got those 2 late goals, because I think in that actual performance where in that game you scored, we had done everything. We'd done everything right. We were playing so well. You had players coming in. I think Andrew Omabamidele was just coming in for, I think, his second game, maybe his first start, or came on for an injury. But
that O'Shea went off, wasn't it? Unfortunately, yeah.
Oh yeah. Sorry, he got an injury, and he came on for him, and he looked like he'd been playing international football for years. But just touching on Ronaldo, you think of how he changed that game. I don't think if it was anyone else, they would have changed the game like he did.
Yeah, and that's why he is who he is. He's done it all his career. He's still doing it. He's going to go down as one of the best players to ever play football. And yeah, we've played Portugal quite a lot, really, to be fair. Haven't we played him 4 or 5 times in the last few years? So yeah, had some good battles. But yeah, he's what more can you say about him? he's a freak. He's a good role model for kids. To be fair, the way he lives his life and the way he's dedicated himself to the game.
Yeah.
Do you think with the penalty miss, Gav saving it, like it was sort of, this might be our night, and then
I thought, yeah, 100%. And when we actually could have gone 2-0 up, we played really well. We rode our luck at times as well, but we had a great chance to go 2-0 up, and Aaron Connolly was pushed, and it
Yeah.
should have been a penalty, to be honest. It was a stonewall penalty. It wasn't given, but yeah. And then, you know, Ronaldo obviously got 2 late goals. And probably us looking back, we should have defended it better, but
you'd look at the height he got to when he scored
yeah,
that header.
yeah,
Like
exactly.
nobody else does that. Like,
Yeah, exactly. And the way he heads the ball as if he's volleying it, like, you know what I mean? He heads it like a bullet into the corner. But yeah, as I said, you know, tight game. You know, one that probably personally I look back on, you know, I always look back on games that I lose more than I win, because I want to see how did I lose that? How did we lose that game? You know, kind of take ownership. What could I do better here for us to win this game? You know what I mean? But yeah, it's great to play against the best teams in the world and the best players in the world. You know, that's what you want to do as a footballer.
Make sure you get yourself in that camp now in a couple of weeks, and yeah, hopefully the lads can get over the line. It's going to be a huge you know, task. But look, I think the belief that we have going into this particular camp off the back of winning the 2 games in the week like we did in November gives the country that, I suppose, that bit big of a lift, and I'm sure the players probably have that feeling as well.
Yeah, definitely. You know, the country, you know, deserves to believe and deserves to have something to look forward to. So, you know, it's a great chance, big game. These are the games you want to be involved in as a player, and you know, these are the games fans want to watch. So yeah, it's, you know, exciting times, and you know, we'll give it our best shot, and we'll give 100% like we always do.
Well, on that note, we just want to say a huge thanks to yourself, John, for coming on as our first player guest on the
Nice.
podcast. So
Thanks a million. Thanks for
thanks
having me
very
on.
much, John. Thank you very much, bud.
Not a bother. Hopefully, I'm on again sometime.
yeah, we'll definitely have to get you on. We'll probably get you on when you finish up playing and see where your next steps are and stuff like that. It'd be a nice kind of segue for that as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, anyone watching or listening, make sure to like, subscribe, leave your thoughts in the comments, and yeah, I'm sure you'll be seeing John soon in an Ireland jersey in a couple of weeks' time. So yeah, we'll speak to you soon. Thanks for watching.
Good, guys.